KIRO, Seattle.
This is COVID-19 Seattle. I'm Dave Ross.
And I'm Aaron Granillo. Governor Jay Inslee unveiled his roadmap for reopening the state's economy.
And it will look more like a turning of a dial than the flip of a switch.
And Inslee says that could mean some restrictions will be lifted. That includes elective surgeries, outdoor recreation, and some private construction projects. But he was also criticized for what he did not say. Inslee didn't announce whether he'd extend his stay-home order beyond May 4th. So, Dave, why doesn't the governor have a clear answer as of yet?
I think he's looking at the statistics, and the latest statistics that I saw this is from the Johns Hopkins website, which gets the information from Washington State, is that the curve has stretched out a little bit. It's still flat, but it's stretched out, so now we're not seeing the deaths go to zero until about the middle of May. So that may be what he's seeing. He also may be looking at some of the experiences in other countries, including Japan and Singapore. I know somebody who's in the fishing industry and has some contacts back there. And Japan, which has reopened, and Singapore, which has reopened, are now seeing a bounce back. And that's the great fear here, that if you reopen too soon before the virus is, vanquished, although without a vaccine, I don't know how you can do that, that there might be a snapback.
We're now having a conversation, though, about whether the stay-home orders are even constitutional or not. There is the Snohomish County Sheriff Adam Fortney now saying he's not going to enforce these orders because he thinks it's unconstitutional. Fortney had a Facebook post, seemed to question the governor's motivations. He asked, why are, for instance, pot shops essential, but gun stores are not? He brought up the fact that Boeing, a factory with locations with thousands of employees, they are now allowed to go back to work. But small independent contractors cannot. What do we make of all of these now? Sheriffs and, of course, protesters defying the governor's orders, calling these unconstitutional.
Well, as I pointed out, I've seen some inconsistencies, too. I don't quite understand why small home improvement projects or other projects where the workers are outside and you stay inside, why that is a problem. I can understand the frustration that a plant like Boeing is opening back up, but your barbershop can't. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the answer. So is it okay if I speculate?
Sure. Why not?
I'm guessing that Boeing, being a company that wants to stay in business, has gone to great lengths to make sure that its workers are protected, because the governor can grant you permission to reopen, but if your workforce becomes sick, then they, in some cases, may be permanently off the line, right? So no company in its right mind is going to go back to work if their workers can get sick. In terms of smaller businesses, I don't know how expensive or difficult it is to get some of the protective equipment that you might need, but that could be the reason that smaller businesses are having a problem. On these demonstrations, well, let's see how far they go. I'm of a mind to say, okay, if you guys don't feel there's a problem, go ahead, reopen, and let's see what happens. I noticed that in Las Vegas, the city is, of course, really hurting. They want to reopen the hotels, and there is this push in the I think it's the mayor. I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong. But she's saying this is ridiculous. Let's just reopen and take our chances. Of course, that's the perfect place. Las Vegas gambles with everything. Those might be useful test cases. We're seeing a test case in Georgia, of course, as we've also talked about, where they're going to reopen barbershops and gyms. And in that case, we will get an answer very quickly whether it was wise or not. My sense is that Governor Inslee is very cautious. I think part of it is because he has been immersed in climate science and has this sense that prevention is much better than letting things run out of control. This is something now, unlike climate change, we're not talking about a 30 or 40-year horizon. We're talking about a 2 or 3 week horizon where we'll know right away whether we made the right move or not. And if we make the wrong move, then we're back to another 2-month lockdown.
And he said, until we go back to where we were before any of this outbreak, there has to be a vaccine in place, right? So he says workplaces will look much different. He says the state will provide guidance to industries so they can safely reopen, but it sounds like physical distancing will be necessary. Perhaps temperature checks will have to be almost mandatory at some businesses. Masks may have to be worn as well.
Yes, well, I think that's true. And I will. Here's how I'll do my part. As somebody who's considered to be in a vulnerable group because I'm over whatever it is. I keep losing track, Aaron, how old I am.
It was just your birthday, wasn't it?
It was just my birthday. Yes. I'm fine. If it will get the economy reopened, I'm fine to stay at home. I can work fine from home, and frankly, I think most people my age are retired by now, so they can probably stay home without causing any financial harm to themselves. So that's fine. My concern is that there are people who just think this whole thing now is overblown, which we predicted. I mean, if you're successful at stopping it, then of course the charge is that we overreacted. But my fear is that, okay, all these young, healthy people are going to go back to work, and then suddenly they're going to wake up one morning with a fever and they have trouble breathing. And now the problem isn't just that the governor overreacted. The problem is that you are incapacitated and you're not going back to work now for a long time. That's just as damaging to the economy, if not more damaging, than keeping healthy people at home, because now you're sick and who knows what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah, Inslee said one of the key indicators for reopening the economy will be if the number of confirmed cases continues to trend down over time.
The data tells us that if we were to lift all restrictions right now, or even 2 weeks from now, this decline would almost certainly stop.
And that's exactly what you're saying, Dave. I mean, that's sort of, he's looking at the science and he's looking at the research. He fears that one small blip on the downside of this curve could cause us to be back right where we were a month ago.
And the current projection is that we would go to 0 deaths per day on May 15th.
Right.
This doesn't really help me figure out, and I don't think anybody really knows, whether this means that we've built up some sort of herd immunity, because we keep hearing, right, that a lot of people have already been through the thing and had either simple flu-like symptoms or no symptoms at all. So I suppose, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers that 25% of us had it and didn't even know it. And now we've got the antibodies and we're safe forever. But since there isn't general testing, and I'm not blaming anybody, Aaron, for the lack of general testing.
Okay.
But since there is no general, that's just a fact, we don't know that for sure. So maybe eventually the will of the people will rule, right? There's a gubernatorial campaign going on. Tim Eyman is campaigning on let's let her rip and open it up. If he starts gaining traction on that, there's going to be pressure on the governor to say, oh, all right, maybe we should roll the dice. But that's what it would be, because we just don't know.
Right. And ultimately, this recovery plan is going to come down to massive statewide testing. Governor, during his televised briefing last night, said that the state is hiring about 1,500 workers who are focused solely on contact tracing by the second week of May. But to successfully reopen, we're going to need to conduct 20,000 to 30,000 tests daily for that plan to succeed. Right now, we're at about 4,000 tests per day. There's a huge gap there, so we're a little bit of ways away.
Well, I heard that there's this test now they can just mail to you, and you give them the swab and you get it back. That's what you need. That's great. I'm ready to do that. But I've heard so many promises about tests before. I'm not holding my breath for that to show up in the mailbox anytime soon. So, Aaron, on this tracking brigade, what kind of job would that be? Your job is to call up somebody and say, hi, we're from the government, and we have information that you have been near somebody who was infected with the virus, and we would like you to self-quarantine for 14 days. What do you do if you get that call?
Oh, geez.
You self-quarantine, because you can work from home if you have to, right?
I guess I would, yeah. But I mean, if I feel fine, and I'm one of these people who is already skeptical of the government, I mean,
yeah,
this is a spam, is what I'm thinking, right? If you're one of those people,
yeah. How would you know?
Right.
It'd be nice in that case if you could say, okay, could you give me the test? I've been exposed, but could you at least just give me the test to see if I really do have the virus or the antibody? So I think maybe those two things would have to go hand in hand, right? Because until then, you're right. How are you going to take a call from the government saying, we think, based on our tracking, and which is a little creepy in itself, right? But you have the virus and need to stay home. And you're going to say, but wait a second, I need the money. I've got to work. Can you at least provide me with a test. And so I think that at the very least, I'd want that person to say, yes, we understand that. We're only doing this for your own good. The test will arrive in your mailbox tomorrow, and you'll know the results in 24 hours. Then does it make it better?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, how feasible is that, and how far away are we from that even becoming a reality, though?
Aaron, this is America. We can do anything.
Yeah,
and
but all these tests are made in China.
Well, not anymore.
Okay, all right.
We will be back tomorrow and every day after with a 10-minute rundown of the daily local news. You can subscribe to this podcast. You can also find our news coverage on mynorthwest.com or listen live at 97.3 FM.